Using this as an example, today we'll cover how I typically lay out an accessible WC, starting with the toilet, then moving on to the vanity, and after that access to the actual room itself with the door and its circulation spaces. As I'm laying out one of these areas, I'm making sure that all these different elements are lining up and can work cohesively together. To get kicked off, we've got a hypothetical corner of a room. So from here, I'm just going to place in my WC. Now I'll need to offset this 450 to 460 millimeters off the center of the toilet. If I go 450, from here we'll put in our circulation spaces, which look a little something like this. These dimensions that you'll find here, as well as here. All the dimensions I'll be using in this video are referenced from the Australian Standard 1428.1, which if you're trying to follow along, I'd highly encourage making sure that you check each of the pages as you go to make sure it suits to your circumstance. Because as we'll see in a minute, some of these minimum circulation spaces depend on the component themselves, but we'll get to that in a minute. For the sake of this example, we're going to try and keep it as constrained as possible, with a few little tolerances. So from here, we'll grab the vanity and we'll drag and drop this one in. Now with the vanity, we've got a minimum 425 offset from the center of the vanity itself. So let's grab the vanity, we'll bring it down to where the wall is, we'll go 425. Now how far can we push our vanity into the space here? This area here is 100 millimeters that could be encroached. So technically I could grab this and bring it pretty close in, but just in case we end up going with a different vanity, I'm going to shift this one back. Although this vanity is relatively generous, I'd rather have just a little bit too much space than not enough. Cool, so we've got our vanity, we've got our toilet. Let's skip ahead and draw in some walls. Now you might have noticed this line just here. This is a 1.4 minimum exclusion zone from the actual pan of the toilet itself. So that means within this area, we can't have the vanity intrude into this space. Only this encroachable area just here. But that's only if you're really pushing things. All right, so from here, we'll want to get access into this room. Room size-wise, I've ended up at 2.8 by 2.1. After this, I'll place a door in the wall. Now, there are a few things that we need to address. First thing is the opening size. We'll find the minimum dimension in the standard, which is just over here. So we need to have a clear opening from here to here of that 850 minimum. So that means from the inside face of the door leaf just here to the surface just here. This way, as someone's coming into the space, they've got adequate room to be able to pass through. So depending on the door library that you're using, it's always worth double checking those measurements. So next up after this, we'll need circulation spaces, which I've got pre-done up over here. So I can just drag and drop into our example. So this is a front approach D, so as we're coming into the room, and a front approach H, as we're coming from the room back out. So as you're going through the standard, you'll need to make sure that the path matches up with what these arrows are. So if you're coming at it from the side, you'll have different circulation space requirements compared to, say, if you're coming at it front on. Drag it from this point just here. We'll create a duplicate, tapping Control, and then that way, can drag it in 50 from the door. Now that's got our circulation space lined up, but what I typically want is to make sure that I've got at least 90 mil offset from this sidewall here. Gives us provision for any kind of architraves. So I'll drag this one up and then I'll offset this one 90 mil. There we go. Now you might have noticed that a lot of these circulation spaces are conflicting, and this is where we really have to go through the standard and double check and make sure that we're all sweet. Tier 86 mentions that circulation spaces, including doors, circulation spaces, may be overlapped. And it gives us a little example just down here. The other one that we do need to watch out for though is this 300 millimeters minimum here. So I'll go back to my file. I'll drag and drop this one I created a little bit earlier, just into where my door is. There we go. So that's most of our circulation spaces taken care of, but there are also grab rails, as well as toilet paper dispensers and flushing mechanisms that have their own requirements as well, which they do have detailed out in the standard. Oh, also backrests. That's one to watch out for. But for the sake of the layout, this should be enough. And I typically go into more depth at construction certificate stage, where we're doing the construction drawings, including some internal elevations, some sections, and maybe even a cool isometric. But I don't typically worry about them at layout stage. Now, if you'd like this ArchiCAD file or any of my other tutorial files, there'll be a link in the description down below. But if you're looking for more tips and tricks, then I think you'll love this video just over here.